If this slow journey into the past helps you unwind, feel free to like the video before we begin. It helps other sleepy minds find their way here too. Now, settle in and let's begin our journey into a cold winter night long ago. A village wrapped in frost. A medieval village lies quiet under frost and snow, smoke curling gently from thatched rooftops into the still air. Dawn comes slowly in the depths of winter. The sun is a pale suggestion behind grey clouds, rising late and offering little warmth. In a small medieval village, somewhere in Western Europe, the morning light reveals a world silenced by cold. Overnight, a heavy frost has silvered the fields and the cottages. Every bare twig on the hedgerows is coated in white rime, glittering when a feeble ray of sun breaks through. Thin sheets of ice rim the edges of puddles and water troughs, and every breath of the villagers emerges as a puff of white in the frigid air. Even the sounds of morning are muted. The usual crow of a rooster is muffled by the dense cold, and the village dogs are slow to stir from their slumber. The usually muddy lanes are hardened with frost, crunching under the faint footfalls of early risers. Here and there, delicate tracks crisscross the fresh snow, the paw prints of a fox that wandered near the cottages in the night, and the tiny imprints of mice or birds searching for stray grains. Beyond the fields, a lone crow calls from the skeleton of an oak tree, its black form startling against the frosted landscape. Inside one humble cottage, a farmer and his family stir from sleep, bundled beneath layers of woolen blankets and cloaks. The interior of their home is dim and hazy, with the remnants of smoke from last night's fire. There is no glass in the small window, only a wooden shutter that stays closed against the cold, and the wattle and daub walls are thin, so the night chill crept in despite their best efforts. The dirt floor of the cottage is icy on bare feet, and a thin film of frost even rims the interior of the door where a draft slipped through. The family is careful to keep their stockings or woolen socks on as they rise. In one corner of the single-room home, a cow shifts and lows softly. She has been kept inside through the bitter night. It's not uncommon for peasant families to shelter a few animals indoors during winter. Their body heat adds a welcome bit of warmth to the home. Chickens might roost on a high beam or in a lean-to against the cottage wall, huddling together to share warmth, just as the family does. The new day's first task is to coax life back into the hearth. The farmer's wife kneels by the fire pit, pulling her shawl tight with one hand and carefully stirring the ashes with the other. She seeks any faintly glowing embers that might still lurk underneath. Finding a few dull red specks, she feeds them with dry tinder, a handful of straw and shreds of birch bark saved for this purpose. She leans in and blows gently, her breath creating a small cloud of sparkles in the cold air. After a few moments, a tiny flame flickers to life. Soon, orange firelight dances on the cottage's rough timber walls once more. The wife adds a couple of small sticks, then larger pieces of wood as the fire gains strength. The hearth's warmth slowly begins to push back the chill. A pot of water is hung over the rejuvenated fire, its sides blackened by long use. Outside, the world may be locked in frost, but here, by the hearth, there is the promise of heat. As the water warms, she adds a handful of coarse oatmeal and a pinch of salt, starting a simple porridge to break the family's fast. The thin aroma of boiling oats mingles with the familiar scent of wood smoke, creating a homely steam that the children sniff appreciatively. Beyond their door, others in the village are waking and tending to similar morning chores. A bleary-eyed boy trudges through the snow, carrying 2 buckets yoke-balanced on his shoulders. His task is to break the ice on the village well and draw water for his household. At the well's stone rim, he finds two women already there. They chatter in low voices through puffs of breath as they haul up the heavy bucket from the frigid water below. Nearby, an older man carries an axe toward the woodlot, knowing more firewood must be gathered while the weak daylight lasts. Even in the dead of winter, a peasant's work is never done. There are tools to mend and fences to fix, repaired with whatever spare wood and twine can be found. Villagers spread manure on the frozen fields to fertilize the soil for spring, and they check on the small winter crops. Patches of hardy cabbage and leeks still in the ground, kept alive under straw coverings. Earlier in the season, before the first hard freeze, wheat was sown in the fields. Now the seeds lie dormant beneath the snow, waiting for the sun's return. What work can be done outdoors, they do quickly, stomping their feet to keep toes warm in the crisp air. Many tasks have been put on hold until milder weather, yet the livestock still need care each day. Those who have cows or goats lead them out briefly to drink unfrozen water and then back to shelter. And every morning and evening, the animals must be fed and their stalls cleared. A farmer pauses to scratch the ears of his solitary pig, thankful that this year he had enough fodder to keep the animal alive through the cold. By mid-morning, a fragile sunbeam breaks through the clouds, illuminating the white frosted thatch of cottage roofs. Smoke curls steadily from each smoke hole in the roofs. If one were to wander through the village now, they would see small scenes of daily life persevering despite winter's grip. Here is the blacksmith, bundled in a thick cloak, briefly rekindling his forge fire to repair a broken axe head. Over there, two women with red, cold-nipped hands sit on a bench outside a cottage, carding wool and spinning yarn in a patch of pale sunlight. Winter is the time for such indoor crafts. Spinning, mending clothes, and patching threadbare cloaks. Tasks often set aside during the harvest rush of autumn. As they work, they chat quietly about whose cow may calve in spring and how much hay remains in their lofts. Down the lane, inside the baker's cottage, yesterday's embers are being fanned to bake another batch of coarse rye bread. The yeasty scent wafts through the door as the baker's eldest daughter opens it to cool a pair of crusty loaves. A thin cat, hoping for a warm spot, slips inside before the door closes. The baker's children hover near the hearth, hoping for a taste of dough or a heel of warm bread later in the day. Despite the hardships of the season, the village carries on with a quiet, determined rhythm. People speak in softer voices on winter mornings, as if not to disturb the muffled silence that snow and frost bring. When neighbors meet by the well or pass each other on the road, they exchange polite wishes. "God keep you warm," one might say, and the other replies, "And bless your hearth." Such greetings carry sincere hope, for everyone knows how precious warmth is when the cold bites. They all remember tales of winters so harsh that livestock froze and travelers never returned. Those memories live in the oldest villagers, who mutter prayers whenever the wind rises bitterly. But on this day, the weather, though frigid, is calm. No blizzard howls down the chimney. No new snow buries the doors. For that small mercy, they are thankful. Around midday, the feeble sun reaches its zenith and casts a pearly light over the white village. In each cottage, families pause in their labors to share a simple meal. The mother in our cottage ladles the now thick pottage, from the pot into wooden bowls. It has been enriched with a few bits of dried peas and carrots, and flavored with a sprig of parsley and a pinch of salt. This thick, hearty stew of grains and vegetables is a staple during the cold winter months. Essentially, everything goes into the pot, whatever they have on hand. Today there is no meat to add, but if they're lucky, later in the week, a morsel of bacon might flavor the pot. Alongside the porridge, they share a loaf of coarse barley bread baked yesterday, chewing the dense slices slowly. Each bite is filling if not exactly flavorful, and the warm food is a comfort in their bellies. In many homes, this would be the main meal of the day. The family members eat quietly, gathered close to the hearth for warmth as they sit on low stools or the edge of the bed. As they eat, the soft routines of village life continue around them. The church bell in the little wooden steeple chimes the hour of noon with a dull clang. Its sound carries over the rooftops, and some of the villagers pause and bow their heads. A brief prayer at midday, in thanks for surviving another cold morning. Over by the baker's wife, who is one of the more charitable souls in the village, steps out with a covered basket. In it are a few small rolls of bread that she managed to bake extra from the week's flour. She walks through the lane and stops by an old widower's door, leaving 2 rolls on his threshold as a gift, knowing he struggles to afford enough grain this time of year. Such small kindnesses are common and necessary. In these harsh months, neighbors quietly support one another. Meanwhile, a couple of children, finished with their own meager lunches, have taken to playing in the snow behind the church. Their muffled giggles ring out as they roll up handfuls of snow and begin fashioning a lumpy snowman, using pebbles for its eyes. Another pair of boys slide on a frozen patch of pond, using flat stones as improvised skates in a burst of wintry fun. Their cheeks are flushed red with cold and excitement. These brief moments of playfulness help remind everyone that even in the dead of winter, laughter can be found. As afternoon wears on, the weak light begins to fade. The already short day seems to pass quickly when daylight is so scarce. The sun, such as it was, sinks lower, casting long blue shadows across the snowy lanes. A hush falls over the fields as the temperature drops again. The peasants hurry to finish any remaining outdoor tasks before losing the light. The young girl who fetched water earlier now pulls a sled loaded with firewood, sticks toward her home, careful not to spill any of the precious fuel. Her older brother rounds up their family's few sheep from the patch of grazing by the road and ushers them back into the safety of their shed. The sheep's woolly coats are thick with winter growth, and they huddle together for warmth as the air grows colder with each passing minute. Across the village, shutters are latched and doors secured against the coming night. One by one, people retreat into their homes, bringing a final armload of wood inside and ushering in any barn cats that might keep mice from the grain sacks. By twilight, a delicate snow begins to fall, just a dusting of fine powder that softens the outlines of roof and tree. In the dimness, the cottages emit a warm glow from their cracks and doorways as fires are stoked inside. The village is wrapped in frost and now also in the veil of an early winter dusk. From outside, one might only see the faint light flickering between the shutters and hear the muffled sounds of a baby's cry or a cow's low from within. The world contracts to each household and its small pool of warmth. In our cottage, the farmer bars the wooden door for the night, shutting out the darkness and the deepening cold. Inside, his family gathers close around the hearth. The hardest part of the day is over. Now comes the long winter night, which they will endure together with the help of a humble fire and each other's company. In that shared glow, the sorrows of the cold world outside are held at bay, at least for a while. The hearth, center of winter life. In the depths of winter, The hearth's glow sustains life in a peasant's cottage, offering light and warmth against the dark cold. Inside the cottage, the hearth is much more than a place to cook. It is the living heart of the home. The family gathers in a tight circle around the fire as night closes in. Flames crackle softly, casting a gentle orange glow on their faces and sending shadows dancing across the low ceiling. All day, the frigid cold has seeped into the walls, but here, by the open fire, there is a small sanctuary of warmth. Beyond the immediate ring of firelight, the corners of the single-room hut lie in darkness, cold and quiet. Naturally, everyone keeps as close to the fire as they safely can. The father sits on a rough wooden stool, extending his calloused hands toward the heat. The mother settles on a low bench, the baby swaddled and cradled in her arms, absorbing warmth from both mother and hearth. The older children arrange themselves on the earthen floor, which is covered in straw near the fire, to make a dry, insulated mat. They pull their threadbare cloaks tight around themselves like blankets. Here, pressed near the friendly crackling fire, the family can almost forget the bitter chill that lurks just outside their door. The architecture of their little home revolves around this central fire. There is no chimney to carry away the smoke. Instead, the smoke from the burning logs curls up toward a small hole in the thatched roof, or simply filters through the thatch itself. This crude ventilation allows some smoke to escape, but much of it lingers, hanging in the air in faint bluish wisps. The rafters above have turned black over years of soot. Now and then, a draft from outside gusts through the gaps in the door or walls and pushes the smoke around, making it swirl. The family is so accustomed to wood smoke that it hardly bothers them. If their eyes water a little at first, they soon adjust, and the smoky smell has even permeated their clothing over time. That scent of hearth smoke is comforting in its own way, a familiar aroma that means warmth, cooked meals, and family togetherness. In fact, the smoke has an unintended benefit. It acts as a natural preservative, not only for foodstuffs hung overhead to dry, but for their clothes as well. Their woolen cloaks and tunics, rarely washed during winter, are imbued with smoke, which helps mask the odors of sweat and labor. In this manner, the ever-present smoke is both nuisance and blessing, a constant companion through the long winter months. On the hearth, a low fire is maintained with great care. Firewood is a precious commodity, each log and stick gathered with hard effort, so the family keeps the fire moderate, never letting it roar too high. A large cauldron hangs from an iron hook over the flames, heating the evening meal. Earlier in the day, the mother had already cooked the main stew for dinner, but now she might warm some broth or steep a tisane of herbs. Tonight, there is a small treat, a handful of dried apples saved from autumn, rehydrated in the simmering pot to create a warm, fruity drink for the children. The smell of apples and a pinch of cinnamon from the spice jar, used sparingly, mingles with the smoky air. The children sit up eagerly as their mother pours the hot drink into coarse clay cups. Sipping the spiced cider, they feel its gentle heat spread through their bellies. Such little comforts are cherished deeply on a cold night. While they eat and drink, the family occupies themselves with simple, homely tasks. Idle hands would only get colder, so they keep busy by the fireside. In the flickering light, the father takes a small knife and a scrap of wood and begins to carve. By daylight, he is a farmer, but on winter evenings he becomes a woodworker of necessity. Tonight he works on shaping a new wooden spoon to replace one that cracked. With slow, deliberate strokes, he whittles the wood, the the carving illuminated by the glow of the hearth. Now and then, he pauses to inspect his work, the firelight highlighting the furrows of concentration on his brow. On the other side of the hearth, the eldest daughter crouches with a basket of torn clothing at her side. With cold-numbed fingers, she tries to mend a hole in her little brother's wool tunic. Thread and needle flash briefly in the light as she pushes the needle through the fabric again and again. It's tedious work, but there will be satisfaction in knowing her brother will be a bit warmer with his clothes patched up. Meanwhile, the mother has set the baby down onto a blanket near the warmth. The infant, bundled and round as a little hedgehog, sleeps soundly through the murmurs of family activity. The mother takes up her spindle and a tuft of wool. By firelight she spins, drawing out the fibers with practiced patience. The spindle's wooden wall turns and turns, twisting loose wool into strong thread. Spinning is a task she can do almost automatically, and it gives her a moment of calm thought. Each member of the family has found something to do, a ritual of both necessity and comfort that passes the slow hours of evening. As the night deepens, a sense of peace and drowsiness grows in the warm circle around the fire. The children, now full and warm, grow sleepy. The little boy nods off, his mending forgotten as he leans against his father's knee. The carved spoon in the father's hand is nearly finished. He rubs it smooth with a bit of cloth, then sets it aside to cure by the hearth overnight. The mother, noticing the younger children's drooping eyelids, reaches over to stroke the boy's hair. It is time to get some rest. Even though it is not very late by the clock, winter nights are long, and there is little reason to stay up when work will call again at dawn. Sometimes, on such winter evenings, families pass the time by telling old folk tales or singing ballads, sharing a bit of laughter or wisdom by firelight. Tonight, however, an easy quietude has settled. No one feels the need for more than the lullaby's gentle notes and the sense of kinship around the flames. Before they retire, they take a few moments to simply be together and enjoy the hearth's warmth. Perhaps sensing the mood, the father begins to hum a quiet tune, a simple folk lullaby that his own mother sang to him long ago. His deep, soft voice fills the dim cottage with a gentle melody. The mother joins in under her breath, and even the older daughter, half drowsing, smiles and hums along. The lullaby has no real words, just a soothing refrain carried on a breath of memory. The flames sway as if to the rhythm of the song. For a short while, the family is suspended in a warm, timeless bubble of light amid the dark of winter. Outside, the wind may be picking up and the night growing ever colder, but inside, they have this moment of gentle music and togetherness. When the soft singing ends, a comfortable silence falls. The father stands and carefully rakes some of the embers apart, banking the fire for the night. Using a flat piece of green wood, he shovels ashes over the glowing coals at the fire's heart, dimming them so they will burn slowly until morning. This way, the fire will not fully die. Come dawn, those coals can be nursed back into flame to start the next day's fire. A sudden pop from a settling log sends a brief spray of orange sparks swirling upward. Everyone watches as they twirl and wink out harmlessly against the dark roof. They know well to be cautious. Sparks are a danger in a house of timber and straw. Many a winter tragedy has started with a single stray ember on a thatched roof. For that reason, they dare not carry a brazier of hot coals away from the hearth for extra warmth. Such portable fires have caused more than a few disastrous house fires in villages. Better to endure a little chill in the far corners of the room than to risk the whole cottage going up in juices. flames. Instead, they keep the fire itself alive at all times, banking it carefully each night. The hearth's flame is not only their source of heat and light, but in a way their guardian through the darkness. An age-old belief persists that as long as the hearth fire burns, it will ward off evil and misfortune from the household. With the fire safely banked and the last chores done, the family now turns to preparing for sleep. They know the coldest hours of the night are still ahead, and so they begin their nightly routine of bundling up and huddling down, determined to keep each other warm until morning. Wool, fur, and layers. As the family prepares for bed, they layer on every bit of warmth they can muster. The mother gently lifts the sleeping baby, while the older children push aside the spinning and carving for now. The central fire is now a dim glow under ash, so the only light comes from a small clay oil lamp the mother has lit, its wick fed by a scrap of linen and a thimble of rendered fat. By this flickering little flame, they make their final arrangements for the night. First, they spread a thick layer of straw and old reeds on the ground near the hearth, making a dry, insulating foundation for their bed. On top of this, their one large straw-filled mattress is unrolled. It is essentially a coarse linen sack stuffed full of last summer's straw, a humble pallet that can be rolled up each morning and spread out each night. It's not as plush as the feather beds of the rich, but it serves well enough. The straw inside rustles as they pat and shake the mattress, redistributing the stuffing to even tin it out. A few dry grass blades flutter loose, golden in the lamplight as they drift to the floor. They do not have separate bedrooms or individual beds. Instead, the whole family will share this broad sleeping pallet to conserve warmth. Sharing a bed not only reinforces their bond, but also allows them to cool their body heat under the covers, keeping one another warm through the freezing dark. The father and mother settle on one side of the mattress, propping a rolled-up cloak as a makeshift pillow. The children cuddle in next to them, the smallest one nestled securely between his parents and the elder siblings on either side. They have only a couple of bed coverings to drape over everyone. One is a patchwork blanket, made of scrap wool pieces, sewn together, scratchy but thick. The other is a heavy old woolen cloak that has been repurposed as a quilt. Both are spread across the family as far as they will go. The mother tucks the edges in, around the children's shoulders, creating a cocoon of warmth beneath which their bodies will gradually heat the air. Not content with just cloth layers, they add whatever extra insulation they have. The mother reaches for a special coverlet folded at the foot of the bed, a small fur blanket sewn from dozens of rabbit pelts. Though fine furs like fox or sable are forbidden to people of their station, humble furs such as rabbit or lambskin are fair game. Indeed, royal laws of dress allow commoners to use only these cheaper furs, finer pelts, like ermine or sable, being reserved for nobles. So the peasant family makes do with what the Lord's woods provide. Over several seasons, the mother had quietly collected rabbit skins from the creatures the family trapped in the woods, with the Lord's leave, stitching them together into this patchwork fur throw. Now she spreads it atop the other blankets, its soft, tawny fur a luxurious shield against the chill. The father, meanwhile, fetches 2 warm stones that had been heating by the fire. Wrapped in rags, these stones retain a comforting heat. He slips them into the foot of the bed where the children's feet will be, an old trick to chase away the initial icy shock of the bedding. A sigh of relief rises from the bundled youngsters as their toes find the gentle warmth under the covers. The family's clothing itself is humble but carefully made. Almost all of it is homespun, the wool shorn from their own sheep or acquired through barter, then spun into yarn by the women and woven by a local weaver into stout cloth. Their linen undergarments were sewn from flax grown and processed in summers past. Each garment is precious and well worn. Tunics and dresses are patched and darned in many places, lovingly extended in life so that new cloth need not be bought often. Equally important to staying warm is what they wear to bed. In truth, they wear nearly the same garments in sleep as they do by day. There is little notion of changing into night clothes when the air inside the cottage could be freezing. The father removes only his heavy outer tunic, keeping on his linen shirt and woolen hose as he crawls under the blankets. He even leaves his wool cap on his head. A nightcap is essential, since one's head loses much heat and the cottage interior will grow ever colder toward dawn. The mother similarly keeps her long-sleeved linen shift on beneath a wool overdress, and she wraps a knitted shawl around her shoulders. The children are bundled in their thickest sleepwear. The little boy wears a long wool shirt like a mini tunic, and the older girl wears a patched wool dress with leggings underneath. Everyone has socks or foot wrappings. If any of their feet were bare earlier, they certainly aren't now. The thought of touching cold feet to cold bedding sends shivers through them all. Instead, each person makes sure to have some layer of fabric between themselves and the chilly air. Layering is the key to staying warm. A. Linen underlayer to trap body heat close, and woolen layers on top to hold that heat in. Throughout the evening, they have practiced the art of adjusting these layers. They remove a cloak or hood if they feel themselves sweating by the fire, because perspiration would chill them later, and then put it back on once they cool down. Now, in preparation for sleep, they cinch up any loose ends, tying scarves snugly and pulling caps low to prevent cold drafts from sneaking in. Curled up under the pile of blankets, cloaks, and fur, the family finally feels relatively secure against the night's deep freeze. The small lamp is extinguished to conserve oil, leaving the interior nearly black. Only a faint red glimmer from one buried ember in the hearth paints a suggestion of warmth on the wall. For a few moments, whispers drift in the dark as they get comfortable. The father's arm lies protectively over his youngest, and the mother adjusts a bit of cloth to cover a gap near her daughter's neck. They share soft murmurs. "Are you warm enough?" the mother asks, and each child responds with a sleepy yes. In these last quiet minutes before full sleep, their thoughts wander even as their bodies relax. The darkness and cold are daunting, but they have done all they can to ward them off. Drowsily, the older girl recalls how, earlier in autumn, they spent days mending and stuffing their bedding, patching up the tick mattress, and airing it out in the brief sunshine. Such preparation was tedious, but on nights like this, she is grateful for every bit of straw and fabric. The boy, half awake, reaches a small hand to pet the family cat that has crept onto the bed for warmth. The tabby curls up at their feet, adding its purring body to the collective heat beneath the covers. A soft smile graces the mother's lips in the darkness. Even the cat is part of their little winter haven. Within a short time, the entire family drifts off into slumber, huddled together like a litter of sleeping foxes in a den. The father's gentle snoring begins, a reassuring sound in the blackness. The mother, even in sleep, keeps one ear open for any stirring from the baby. But for now, the infant sleeps peacefully, snug against her side. Under layers of wool, fur, and old cloth, their combined warmth forms a pocket of life against the surrounding cold. Outside the bed, The air in the cottage is frosty. Had one a thermometer, it might read near freezing by the pre-dawn hours. But inside their cocoon, it is considerably warmer, heated by their bodies and breath. Now and then, a sleeper shifts, and a bit of cold air sneaks under the covers, making them instinctively tug the blanket tighter. But overall, they remain warm enough to rest. In their dreams, perhaps they wander in summer fields, or sit by roaring bonfires under gentle stars, so the long winter night wears on. Clothed in all their layers and huddled under every blanket and fur they own, the peasant family endures the coldest hours together. Their little cottage might as well be a ship sailing through a dark, frozen sea, and their bedding a small island of comfort on that voyage. No howling wind or icy draught can fully breach their defenses of wool and determination. Tucked in, and together, they sleep on, awaiting the dawn, when the cycle will begin anew with the rekindling of the hearth and the labors of another winter's day. Feasts and famines. A soft, aged voice breaks the silence of the cottage, its tone thoughtful and low. Grandmother, who had been quietly rocking in the shadows near the hearth, has decided to share a story. The family, half tucked into bed but still awake, turns their attention to her. The old woman's lined face is illuminated faintly by the remaining glow of the banked fire as she begins to speak. "You children think this winter is hard," she murmurs gently. "But I remember a winter so harsh that it tested every soul in our village." The children blink sleepily, focusing on grandmother's voice, which carries the weight of many seasons. "I was about your age," she says, nodding to her eldest grandchild, "when the snows fell without mercy. That year, the harvest had been poor. We barely brought in enough grain and turnips to fill the bins. We knew trouble was coming. Winter set in early, and it set in cruel." She pauses, eyes distant, as if seeing scenes long past. "Snow piled, higher than a person," she continues softly. "Day after day of grey skies and storms. The roads disappeared. The world itself felt buried. We ate through our stores by Christmas time, and after that we were boiling acorns and nettles just to have something in our bellies." The children listen, rapt, as grandmother describes that dreadful winter. "Each morning, we feared finding someone cold in their bed, taken by the frost in the night," she says, her voice almost a whisper. "In those days," she explains, "people truly understood how fragile life could be during the dark months. If the crops failed or the weather turned foul, a family could starve to death, and illnesses like pneumonia were ever-present threats. Several of our neighbors fell ill with fevers and chills," she recalls. "We did what we could, sharing what little garlic or herb tonics we had, but we lost some good folks that season." She does not elaborate, but the family knows what she means. In a bad winter, some never live to see the spring. Grandmother's eyes well slightly, with tears at the memory, but she continues. "One night, the snow was so heavy and wet that some roofs gave in under its weight. I remember hearing a great crack in the dark. Our neighbor's cottage roof had collapsed. We pulled together to dig them out at first light." She sighs, looking at the rafters of their own home. "Thanks be to God, our house stood. But others," she shakes her head, "others were not so lucky. Some folk lost their homes, and a few lost their lives, trapped in the cold. In one far hamlet, they said no one could get in or out for weeks. By the time the passes opened, many there had perished of hunger and cold because the snowfalls had lasted so long that people had run out of provisions. And there are people in the country whose memories go back 80 years, who say they'd never seen such great snows, she says softly. A heavy silence falls as the family pictures the desperation of that time. Even the fire seems to hush, only a faint crackle accompanying the grandmother's words. But we who survived, we did so by grit and by caring for each other, grandmother adds, her voice gaining a bit of strength. We learned just how much we could stretch a loaf of bread or a pot of pottage. We made do with things we'd normally throw away. I recall my mother rendering every scrap of fat into candles and grease for cooking, and my father collecting the bark of pine trees. He'd strip the soft inner bark, grind it, and mix it with what little rye flour we had left to bake a kind of bread. Bitter and hard, but it kept us alive. The family around her nods silently. They all know that in dire times, people will eat things they ordinarily wouldn't. When our pig was slaughtered that year, not a piece was wasted, she continues. We collected the blood to make puddings and sausages, and scraped every bit of meat from the bones. I learned to be thankful for things like black pudding, blood sausage, which in better years I wouldn't even want to smell. But hungry bellies have no pride. That rich, dark sausage kept us from starving when even the last potatoes were gone. We even roasted and ground acorns to brew as a hot drink, since tea or ale were long finished. The grandchildren press a little closer together under the blankets as they imagine such hunger. Yet grandmother does not speak in a frightening tone. Rather, hers is matter of fact and calm, as if recounting a bad dream that she has long since come to terms with. We survived that terrible winter, she says, a gentle smile of pride appearing. By the grace of God and the kindness of neighbors, we all shared what we could. When one family's goat died, the rest of the village gave a little milk from our own goats to keep their children fed. And when spring finally came and the snows melted, we rang the church bell as if it were Easter morning. Even though it was still Lent, never have I been so grateful to see green buds and feel the sun. She falls quiet, letting those words settle. The family can almost feel that relief themselves, the mental image of warm sun on their faces after enduring endless cold. After a pause, grandmother clears her throat softly. Not all winters are that cruel, mind you, she says, and her tone lightens. Some winters brought joy and celebration amidst the cold. Let me tell you of another winter I remember, one filled with laughter and feasting. The children's eyes brighten a little at this change in mood. I must have been a young woman then, grandmother continues, newly married to your grandfather. That year the harvest was good and the granaries were full. The winter started mild. Oh, it was cold, of course, but not unkind. And as Christmas drew near, our village came alive with cheer despite the short days. She describes how the villagers decorated their homes and the little church with evergreen boughs. We decked every doorway with holly and ivy, even a bit of bay if we could find it, whatever green we could get in that dead season, she recalls with a smile. The children picture their own cottage with holly leaves and ivy vines hung along the rafters. Indeed, even this year, they have a few sprigs placed by the door for luck and blessing. When Christmastide arrived, it was as if we forgot all about the snow outside, grandmother says. For 12 days, from Christmas Eve to Epiphany, no one worked at all. Imagine that. A whole dozen days of rest and fun, while the land lay frozen. We sang songs, visited neighbors, and played games on the village green. If the snow was packed down enough, there was a big bonfire on Christmas night, and we danced around it, bundled in our cloaks, our faces rosy from the heat and maybe from a sip of spiced ale. She winks, and the mother of the family chuckles softly. She remembers such fires in her own youth. The old woman's voice becomes livelier as she recounts the special celebrations. That was the year our Lord, the Baron who owned these lands, decided to host a grand Christmas feast in his manor hall for the villagers. It wasn't something that happened often, let me tell you. She raises a finger, emphasizing the point. Indeed, the grandchildren know that peasants seldom get to enter the Lord's manor, much less dine there. But that year, he opened his doors on the 12th night and invited all the villeins and cottagers to come dine in his hall. Each of us got to bring a couple of guests, and oh, what a time that was. Her eyes shine with the memory. Your grandfather and I walked up to the manor. My heart was in my throat. I was so nervous. And there we were, stepping into a great hall filled with light and warmth, unlike anything I'd seen. She gestures as she speaks. They had huge tapestries on the walls to keep out the port, draughts, and long tables covered in white cloth. There must have been 100 candles glowing and 2 big hearths roaring with fire. The children picture the scene, their humble grandmother, young and wide-eyed, entering a lord's splendid hall. They sat us down at tables with the lord's servants and other folk. We felt a bit out of place, I admit, she laughs. We kept our caps in hand, not sure if we should really sit on those fine benches. But sit we did, and soon platters of food came around that astonished us. She holds up a hand as if swearing to the truth of it. I remember it clear as yesterday. The smell alone was enough to make one weep with joy. Roasted meats of all kinds, beef, and a great goose, and even a haunch of venison. Meat, which we hardly ate except on special days, and there it was in abundance. They gave us fine red wine to drink, spiced and warm, and there were dishes of stewed mutton and pigeons, buttery pastries, and cheeses, and fruit, figs and grapes in winter. Can you imagine? The children cannot help but smile at her enthusiasm. They have had little tastes of some of those things, but a spread like that is beyond their experience. Grandmother continues. For sweet, they brought out puddings and a great pie filled with apples and dried plums, and nuts, bowls of hazelnuts and walnuts we cracked with small hammers, and honey cakes glazed with sugar. And there was music too, a minstrel playing a lively carol on his lute, filling the hall with merry sound. It was the best meal of my life. We ate and ate until I thought I'd never be hungry again. She chuckles softly. Of course, by the next morning I was hungry. But oh, we were happy. The Lord even allowed us to carry home what we couldn't finish. I wrapped a slice of meat and a bit of cheese in my kerchief to bring to my old father, who hadn't been well enough to attend. Others stuffed their pockets with leftover bread and whatever they could. Sneak away. No one left empty-handed, I can tell you that. In fact, historical accounts noted that generous lords let their peasants take away as much as they could in their clothes from such feasts. And grandmother's tale echoes that practice. Her face grows tender as she describes the camaraderie of that feast. We villagers were all seated together at the lower tables, and for once, we had our fill. I remember looking around and seeing smiles on every face. Old Willem, who usually scowled something awful, was grinning with grease on his chin. The baker's wife was laughing as a maid poured her more wine. Even the Lord's steward, stern fellow that he was, clapped my husband on the back and said, "A merry Yule to you." It felt like we were one big family, just for that night. She places a hand over her heart. It made the hard work and the cold worth it, somehow, like a promise that life wasn't only toil and struggle. There were moments of joy granted to us, too. The children nestle into the covers, warm and content from the images of such merriment. They can almost taste the rich foods their grandmother describes and hear the echo of music in a great hall. The father and mother exchange a glance, both remembering simpler feasts from their own youth, perhaps not as grand as grandmother's, but still bright spots in hard winters. Of course, grandmother says after a moment, her tone turning practical. After Epiphany was over, after the 12 days of Christmas, we had to go back to our daily work. Holiday or not, the cows still needed milking, and the firewood had to be cut. And come the first Monday after Epiphany, Plough Monday, we call it, it was time to take up the plough and yoke the oxen again. We went back to the fields in frost and snow, breaking the ground for spring planting as best we could. The feast was over, and life returned to its usual rhythm. She gives a little shrug. There were debts to pay even after the holiday. The Lord expected his due. I remember we had to send up an extra basket of eggs and 3 loaves of our best bread as rent for his table that January. But you know, she adds, eyes twinkling, we didn't complain. We had feasted well, and the memory of that warmth and plenty carried us through many a cold day afterward. Grandmother folds her gnarled hands in her lap and concludes softly, winter can bring the hardest trials, but it can also hold moments of comfort and kinship like no other time of year. We learn to survive the lean days and cherish the days of abundance, and through it all, we carry on, because every winter, no matter how long, yields at last to spring. She pats the nearest child's blanketed leg reassuringly. Remember that, when the nights feel endless and the wind rattles the door, the spring will come. We survive the dark to see the light again. The family is quiet for a time, absorbing the elders' words. In the dim glow of the hearth, their faces show thoughtful expressions, some somber at the thought of starvation and loss, others serene with hope for brighter days. The father reaches over and gently squeezes grandmother's hand. Thank you for sharing that, he says in a hushed tone. She smiles at him and then at the children, whose eyes are now drooping with drowsiness. The intense emotions stirred by the tales, fear during the famine story, joy during the feast, have ebbed into a feeling of contentment. They have endured hardship before, and they have celebrated together. Both starvation and feasting are part of their people's story, and both have taught them resilience and gratitude. In the hush that follows, the small cottage feels especially cozy. They are a family safe under one roof, with a few stored apples and a heel of bread still on the shelf for tomorrow, and perhaps a festive memory or two of their own to sustain them. Outside, the midwinter wind whispers around the eaves, but inside, grandmother's tales have cast a gentle spell of assurance. Even as the embers settle and night deepens, they hold fast to the understanding that this difficult season will pass. There will be sowing and reaping again, lean times and lush times, and they will meet them all together as generations before them did. With hearts a little more hopeful, the family nestles down once more, ready to seek rest and pleasant dreams, while the storyteller's kindly words echo softly in their minds. Candlelight, prayer, and longing. The deep night hours arrive, when the world is at its stillest. Inside the cottage, all is quiet and dark. The fire has been reduced to faint red coals under its blanket of ash, and the only sounds are the soft breathing of the family and the gentle snores of grandmother from her rocking chair. It is the middle of the night, a time when, in these long winters, people often drift in and out of sleep. The peasants know this pattern well. After a first sleep in the evening, It's not uncommon to awaken for a little while, before a second sleep carries them to morning. In the hush, the mother slowly opens her eyes. She hears a faint whimper and feels her infant stirring against her side. The baby is hungry. With practiced ease, the mother slips out from under the shared blankets, taking care not to let in too much cold air for the others. The baby lets out a soft cry, and the mother shushes gently, lifting the little one into her arms. In the pitch dark, she can barely see, but she knows every obstacle on the floor by heart. Still, for the baby's sake, she decides to make a little light. On a small shelf by the hearth lies a stub of tallow candle in a wooden holder. By touch, the mother finds the flint and steel kept nearby. A few strikes, scritch, scritch, and a spark catches on the candle's blackened wick. The tallow sputters, then yields a tiny, wavering flame. She shields it with her hand, coaxing it to grow. By candlelight, the interior of the cottage emerges from the darkness in shades of amber and shadow. The mother settles herself on a low stool near the hearth, cradling the infant beneath her woolen shawl. The baby roots and begins to nurse, contented little sighs replacing its cries. As the mother feeds her child, she gazes into the candle's flame. The weak light illuminates her tired face, and in her eyes there is a faraway look, a mix of weariness, love, and hopeful longing. In this quiet moment, her thoughts turn, prayerful. She bows her head and whispers a few words of thanks that her family has made it through another freezing day. Then, looking down at the nursing baby, she prays for the strength to keep this little one safe and well. "Dear Lord," she murmurs, voice barely above a breath, "watch over this child and all of us. Keep us through this night and bring us safely to spring." It is a simple prayer, spoken in the stillness, where she feels God surely listens. The baby's tiny hand curls around her finger as if in response. The mother softly hums a fragment of a lullaby to lull the infant back to sleep. In truth, the melody is as much for her own comfort as for the child's. The faint tune, the same she and her husband sang earlier in the evening, sounds different now in the lone candlelight, more wistful and intimate. Each note seems to hover in the air, mingling with the faint scent of wax and smoke. Outside, through the cracks of the shutter, the mother can see a sliver of the night sky. The stars are glittering coldly, and a nearly full moon throws a pale glow on the snow-covered ground. It looks beautiful in its own austere way, she thinks, a peaceful scene of silvery snow and black tree silhouettes. Yet that beauty only deepens her yearning for warmth and life. How she longs to see those trees bud with green again, to feel warm earth under her feet instead of snow. Unbeknownst to the mother, her husband too has stirred from slumber. The father wakes shortly after she does, as if some internal clock alerts him that it's time to tend the fire and check on the household. Noticing the dim glow of the candle, he quietly rises onto one elbow. The bed is cooler without his wife's presence beside him, and he instinctively reaches to where the baby had been nestled, finding the spot empty. But he soon sees the silhouette of his wife by the hearth and relaxes, understanding. He decides to let her have this quiet time and not disturb her. Gentle song. The father pushes the blanket aside and stands, stretching a bit in the chilly air. His joints are stiff from the day's labor and the night's cold, so he rubs his arms and shoulders briskly. He steps over the sleeping children carefully and makes his way to the door, pulling his cloak from a peg as he goes. Perhaps he means to fetch a bit more wood for the fire, or simply to get a breath of air. Lifting the wooden bar, He cracks open the door and slips out into the night, leaving it slightly ajar behind him. Outside, the winter night embraces him fully. The air is biting cold, immediately nipping at his nose and ears, but it is also profoundly still. The earlier clouds have passed, and the sky is a tapestry of countless stars. The moon hangs high, bathing the village in a gentle glow. Every roof of the nearby cottages is coated in white, shimmering faintly. The snow-covered fields stretch out beyond, luminous under the moonlight. The scene is silent, except for the found, distant, muffled rush of the river under ice and the occasional hoot of an owl from the woods. The father pulls his cloak tighter and steps a few paces from the door. His breath puffs in front of him, turning to frost in his beard. As he gazes up at the stars, he feels a mix of awe and loneliness that the vast night often brings. There is something humbling about standing under the winter sky, the same stars shining down on him that shone on his ancestors and will shine on his descendants. The world is asleep, and he alone keeps watch in this moment. He thinks of the many winter nights he has seen, and how each one, no matter how interminable it seemed, eventually gave way to dawn. Closing his eyes, he offers a silent prayer, not a formal prayer, learned from the church, but a personal plea from the heart. Please grant us endurance, he thinks, addressing the heavens. Keep my family safe through the cold, and let me be strong enough to care for them. In that, prayer is all his longing. Longing for protection, for deliverance from want, for the simple joys of life to return with the sun. He opens his eyes and looks to the east, where he knows the first light will eventually appear. Of course, it is far from morning yet. The horizon is dark, but imagining the faint, rosy tint of dawn that will come, perhaps in a few hours, gives him comfort. The worst of the night is nearly over, he tells himself. Each night survived is one night closer to spring. Winter may be long, but it is not forever. With that thought, the father turns and quietly re-enters the cottage, closing the heavy door against the cold. The interior seems even warmer now, after the frigid outside air. In the gloom, he sees that his wife is still awake, the candle still bravely alight in her hand. She has finished nursing, and the baby now sleeps against her shoulder, full and content. The mother stands swaying gently, rocking the infant and humming under her breath. The father approaches and meets her eyes. He offers a tender smile and lays a hand on the baby's back, feeling the little one's warmth through the swaddling cloth. For a moment, husband and wife stand together by the soft glow of the candle, their faces close, reflecting the little flame. They don't speak. They don't need to. In that shared gaze, they exchange all their hopes and worries without a word. They are in this life together, come what may. The father notices that the candle has burned low, a small pool of melted tallow threatening to drown the flame. Candles are precious, and this one's life is nearly spent. Gently, he reaches over and cups his hand around the flame, then blows it out with a soft puff. The darkness rushes back in, but their eyes slowly adjust to the faint red gleam of the buried coals. The mother carefully lays the now sleeping baby back in the bed, tucking the covers around the tiny form. The father adds a couple of wood chips and a finger-width stick to the fire, stirring the ashes just enough to coax a bit more heat without fully reigniting the flames. The ember's glow brightens momentarily, throwing long shadows, then returns to a dull red. In the darkness, the parents move back to the bed. The mother lies down first, curling herself around the baby protectively. The father lies behind her, drawing the blanket over both of them. He He is chilled from his outing, and she reaches back to find his hand with hers, entwining their fingers and sharing her warmth. He presses a gentle kiss to the back of her head, where a few strands of her hair have escaped her nightcap. "All is well," he whispers reassuringly, more out of habit than necessity. She nods, whispering back, "Yes, go to sleep now." Under the faint glow of the recovered embers, the interior of the cottage is peaceful once more. The father closes his eyes, feeling the steady rise and fall of his wife's breathing and the small warmth of the baby between them. The mother, though tired, remains awake just a minute more, listening. She hears the soft rustle of the thatch as a midnight breeze passes over it, and beyond that, the far-off howl of wind across the fields. But inside here, their little world is safe. The father's earlier prayer echoes in her mind, and she echoes it silently. "Please, keep us safe. See us through to the spring." That heartfelt wish, shared by both of them, is the longing that gives this dark hour meaning. It is a hopeful yearning, a quiet insistence that there are better days ahead. In the medieval winter, such longing for light and warmth is as vital as the bread and fire that sustain their bodies. It sustains their spirits. With that comforting thought, the mother finally lets herself drift back towards sleep. The father is already slipping into dreams beside her. Together, they and their family slide into the second sleep of the night. The candle has been snuffed, but an image of its small, courageous flame seems to linger in their minds as they sleep, a tiny beacon of hope against the darkness. In the silent hours that follow, the cottage remains cloaked in shadow, but not in despair. The parents' quiet vigil, their whispered prayers and loving glances, have imbued the place with a sense of calm purpose. They have acknowledged the darkness, and they have responded with light, however little a candle's worth, and with faith and love. In this way, the long winter night passes, minute by minute, towards its end. And in their dreams, perhaps the mother and father both wander under summer skies, with the baby giggling in sunshine, a sweet vision planted by their longing, a promise they hold on to until it can become reality. Spring's distant promise. The endless cycle of winter nights and days quietly advances. By slow degrees, almost imperceptibly at first, the darkness begins to recede. Each day, the sun climbs a little higher and lingers a few minutes longer in the sky. The villagers mark their calendars by holy days, and they know that Candlemas, the feast of the purification on February 2nd, has arrived. Winter, by tradition, lasts from Michaelmas to Candlemas, and now Candlemas is here, bringing with it the hope that the worst of the cold is nearly over. On that day, the entire village gathers in the small stone church. They huddle together in pews, their breath visible in the chilly chapel air, and hold candles in their hands. The priest blesses each flame, a symbol of light and life, to carry them through the remaining weeks of winter. The candle's glow illuminates the villagers' faces, worn and drawn from the hard season, yet expectant. As the Latin prayers echo in the nave, each person silently offers their own prayer that soon, warmth and light will return to their world. After the service, the villagers spill out into the weak midday sun, clutching their blessed candles. There is a customary saying they exchange on Candlemas. If the day is bright and clear, they expect more winter to come. If it is cloudy or foul, spring might come early. This Candlemas day, fittingly, is overcast with a gentle grey sky. "Looks like an early spring, God willing," says old Jacob, The ploughman, as he squints at the unshadowed ground. His neighbors nod, hopefully, though snow still carpets the earth. A subtle softness is in the air. The day is cold, but not quite so bitter as a month ago. Sure enough, in the days following Candlemas, small signs of change emerge. The snow that once lay heavy and thick begins to recede under the afternoon sun, shrinking slowly into patches and mounds. Where the snow has melted away, the earth is revealed, sodden and brown. In some sheltered spots against the south-facing stone wall of the churchyard, a few brave green shoots have poked up, the first snowdrop flowers peeping out with delicate white bells. A young village girl spots them while fetching water and runs home excitedly with one cupped in her mittened hands. She presents this treasure to her grandmother, and soon the quiet news spreads. The snowdrops are up. Such a tiny herald, yet it sends a ripple of gladness through the community. In cottages and by barn doors, neighbors exchange smiles and say, "It won't be long now." The family we have watched through the winter also feels the change. One morning, the little boy bounds out of the door to find that the puddle by the threshold, once frozen solid each dawn, has thawed into muddy water. He stamps in it with glee, splashing slush. The mother scolds him lightly for getting wet, but cannot help smiling. The mud is a mess, yes, but it's a sign that the ground is warming. The father, too, is busy in these late winter days. With the soil beginning to soften, he joins the other men in repairing their ploughs and carts, readying the oxen and horses for the labor to come. On the first Monday after Epiphany, Plough Monday, they had symbolically carried the village plough to church to be blessed, and now that blessing is put into practice. Out in the fields, the snow has mostly gone except in shaded hollows, and the men drive their plough teams through the topsoil, turning it over to expose it to the pale sun. The earth steams slightly in the cool morning, and larks, absent all winter, flutter overhead, singing their clear songs. Their music is like a promise carried on the breeze. It is not that winter is completely finished. Far from it. February in these parts is fickle, prone to sudden frosts and surprise squalls of snow. Indeed, one evening, a brief storm blows through, coating the village in white once more by nightfall. The children sigh to see the snow return, fearing that spring had been a false hope. But the adults are not dismayed. They know such reversals are to be expected. February Filldike, shrugs grandmother, using the old saying that February fills the ditches with snow or rain. And true enough, within a couple of days, that fresh snow melts away under a sun now stronger than before. Any new snow that falls now doesn't last. Its power to endure is waning. The ground underneath remembers spring and will not stay frozen for long. As March approaches, the entire village seems to awaken bit by bit from its long slumber. The air, though still chilly, carries new scents. The damp richness of thawing soil, a whiff of green growth in the woods beyond. One day, the father returns from the forest with a bundle of kindling and reports that he heard something remarkable, the trill of a songbird deep among the trees. Perhaps a thrush or a blackbird newly returned from its winter absence. This sets the family talking eagerly. The mother mentions she has seen the geese at the pond, acting restless, honking as if ready to migrate northward again. The eldest daughter, who tends the chickens, notes that the hens have begun laying a few more eggs now as the daylight lengthens. Each observation is small, but together they paint a picture. The season is turning. The ultimate proof arrives in the barn one chilly dawn. The family's goat, kept pregnant through winter, finally gives birth to a pair of kids. The mother goat had been laboring through the night, and by sunrise, 2 wobbly, long-eared babies are nuzzling at her side. The father calls the family to come see the sight. They gather in the straw-strewn corner of the barn, huddled in cloaks against the lingering cold, and quietly admire the newborn animals. The little boy giggles as one kid, white with a brown patch over one eye, totters up to him and bleats. The mother goat eyes the humans warily, but allows them to stroke her kid's soft fur. The mother of the family smiles widely. "Kids for spring, that's a good omen," she says. "Fresh goat milk will soon be on their table, a nourishing boon after the scant dairy of winter." The promise of plenty is returning, one small step at a time. As days pass, more births occur. In a neighbor's pen, a sow delivers a litter of piglets. Over at the manor's stables, the Lord's mare bears a foal on a blustery March day. Each time news of new life spreads, it bolsters everyone's spirits. The village children spend more time outdoors now, delighted by the puddles and the bits of greenery poking from the thawed ground. They play at tossing pebbles and race with sticks floating down the swollen, melting brook. The sun that shines on them is still gentle and pale, but grows a little bolder each afternoon. And then one fine day, it happens. The air itself changes quality. A mild breeze blows in from the south, carrying a scent of warmth that the villagers have almost forgotten. The elder folk sniff and close their eyes, recognizing the fragrance of young grass and moist buds. The field by the church, which had been brown and trodden, shows the faintest haze of green when viewed from a distance. Tiny blades of new grass are sprouting through the mud. Housewives throw open shutters to let in the fresh air, and the entire village seems to breathe deeply after being shut in for so many months. Our peasant family takes part in the reawakening wholeheartedly. Blankets and cloaks that had been endlessly used through winter are brought outside and hung over lines or fences to air in the sunlight. The children gleefully beat the bedding with sticks to knock out the dust and stale odors of smoke. The cottage door stands propped open during the day to release the accumulated haze of months of indoor fires. It feels as though the house itself sighs in relief, exhaling the trapped winter air and inhaling the mild spring breeze. The mother busies herself sweeping out every corner, an early spring cleaning. In the garden plot behind the house, patches of soil begin to dry enough to work. The family turns over the dirt with spades, preparing it for the seed potatoes and onion sets that will go in soon. It is hard work, but nobody complains. After being cooped up, it is a joy to feel the sun and see the rich earth again. The little boy proudly pulls the last few frost-killed cabbage stalks and tosses them on the compost heap, clearing way for new planting. One golden evening, the family gathers outside their cottage after supper. It is the first time in many months that it's been pleasant enough to sit outdoors together. The sky in the west is streaked with pearly clouds, and the air carries the sound of frogs peeping from the marshy pond at the edge of the village. Frogs. Their chorus is humble music to the peasants' ears, as welcome as the first birdsong. The father sits on a stool, his back against the warmed wall of the cottage, whittling a bit of wood in, the remaining light. The mother nurses the baby openly under the sky, no longer needing to huddle away from cold wind. The older children play nearby, inventing games with sticks and leftover bits of firewood, their laughter bright and carefree. Grandmother rocks gently in a chair by the threshold, humming an old tune about spring's first flowers. She has a sprig of blooming primrose pinned to her shawl, a little yellow flower that she found by the hedgerow that afternoon. Its fragrance is faint but sweet. As dusk falls, the family stays out longer than they normally would, reluctant to miss a single moment of the gentle evening. There is no urgent need to rush indoors. They know that even if the night turns chilly, the worst bitterness is past. Eventually, as the stars prick out in the purple sky, the mother shoos the children inside to prepare for bed. But everyone carries an ember of the springtime within them now. The hearth will still be lit for warmth tonight, but they sense that before long, the fire can die down to mere embers without discomfort. Soon, the nights will be mild, and the heavy cloaks can be put away. Lying in bed that night, the little boy whispers to his sister, "How many days until summer?" She whispers back with a smile, "Not so many." From across the dark room, their mother chuckles softly, "Hush now, sleep. Summer will get here when it does," she murmurs. Her voice is full of contentment. She closes her eyes and listens to the night sounds flowing through the open window shutter. The very fact that they dared to leave it open a crack is proof of the changing season. In the distance, an owl calls comfortably, and from the woods comes the faint yip of a fox on the prowl. These sounds no longer inspire dread as they did on midwinter's longest nights. Now they simply underscore the liveliness returning to the world. Before she drifts off, the mother offers a last silent prayer of thanks, this time in gratitude for the coming of spring. She thinks of the stores of food that, though low, lasted through the worst weeks, of the health of her family, of the baby now plump and rosy-cheeked, who hadn't even been born the past spring. So much to be thankful for. Beside her, the father is already asleep, exhausted from the day's labors in the fields, yet with a contented look on his face, even in slumber. His calloused hand rests on his wife's, and she gives it a gentle squeeze before settling down. Outside, the night may still be cool, but it no longer carries the threat of death. Spring's promise has taken root, and each dawn now brings earlier light and new warmth. In the morning, the cockerel will crow, and the family will rise to a world that grows greener and brighter by the day. There will be hard work ahead, ploughing, sowing, tending the animals, and mending fences battered by winter. But there is an eagerness in that work, fueled by the knowledge that fair days are coming. The cycle of seasons turns, as it always has and always will. For now, in the darkness just before dawn, the cottage and the village around it lie peacefully asleep. The long winter is receding into memory, and the dreams of the sleeping peasants are filled not with snow and hunger, but with images of future harvests, sunny festivals, and evenings of plenty. The distant promise of spring is no longer distant. It is blossoming all around them. Soon, the first light of a new spring day will glow on the horizon, and the village will awaken to birdsong instead of silence. And as the peasant family opens their eyes to that gentle daylight, they will know that they have persevered through the coldest nights, emerging into the warmth of a new season, together, resilient, and hopeful for the blessings to come.